So today I'm going to break down what maps the new agent Veto is going to be meta on. Now, the first thing you have to understand with this agent Veto, and again, I'm not going to go, if you want to look for the abilities, you know, there's many other videos out there talking about the specifics of these abilities, but the first thing you need to know about this agent, of course, is that he does counter utility, but it isn't every bit of utility, it's only some, right, with this ability, the Interceptor. And that is important for understanding what maps this agent is perhaps going to be best on, right, because certain agents, like Breach, he doesn't counter that much, but other agents, like Gecko or Fade, he does counter a lot. So when you're thinking about what maps this agent is going to be good on, one thing that you need to keep in mind is, well, what is already good on the map and how good is he against those agents, right? And we'll start off on a map here like Bind, where on this map, yeah, there is agents that he is going to be very good against, right? Raze, Yoru, Sky, Fade, Gecko, all agents that, you know, Veto is going to counter pretty hard, to be honest, with this ability. So that obviously is a big bonus for him in terms of playing him on this map, right? It's definitely going to help you quite a lot. The other thing that I think makes Veto good on a map is you've got the two abilities here in the Chokehold and the Ult, the Evolution, which are kind of just going to be pretty decent everywhere, to be honest. You know, there is no range restriction on them. The Ult lasts the entire round. So those abilities are just kind of what they are. It's really the other two, the Interceptor, which as I mentioned is generally going to come down to, are there positions that you can place it that are, you know, hard to destroy and, you know, are in a good spot and will destroy a lot of utilities. For instance, this position is, you know, very hard for the attackers to actually destroy that before you know, activate it. And even when it is activated, you know, they're going to have to be very deep onto the site or already out, by which point you've already destroyed their utility, so they're going to be in some trouble and they're looking the wrong way, right? If a map has a lot of these kind of positions where it's like, oh, you know, that's very difficult to destroy and it's going to destroy a lot of their utility, obviously the more of those positions there are, the better for Veto. And again, as I mentioned before, it depends what agents are already good on the map in terms of whether he'll be good on the map, right? But the other ability that's going to matter a lot for this are the teleporters, of course, which is called the Crosscut, because again, this has a range on it, right? Similar to kind of chamber stuff. So the range on the Crosscut here, you know, you need to consider, like, is it a map where, you know, like, can I find enough good teleporters? You know, where can I position things? Like here, for instance, you know, I can get out of this kind of spot and I'm fine and I'm safe, but, you know, on other bigger maps, potentially it's not as easy. So that's the first thing to consider. Second thing to consider, though, as well, is that these crosscuts are very good for teleporting across the map. And so if it's a map that requires, like, kind of fast rotations, or if rotation time is, like, something that's, like, a big issue, you think, on a map, or this agent helps solve, like, for instance, it could be on Bind, you know, that's obviously going to benefit him significantly, right? Like, if the rotation time for, you know, players is something that they really care about on a map like Bind, like potentially a Corrode or something, then, you know, being able to use these teleporters in certain spots and get across the map is definitely going to be good for you. So with that in mind, I'm starting here on Bind because I think that Bind is arguably his best map, right? I think it's a map where you're going to get good use out of the teleporters. You're going to be able to find some good spots for the Interceptor as well. And he's very good against a lot of the agents that are already good on Bind. So I think that Bind is just a map that he suits very well. It's just a map that you get a lot of kind of these big util combos as well on this map, right? You can get often like a lot of utility just getting pummeled your way while pressing this ult button, just being immune to it all is definitely going to help. Okay, now let's come to Abyss, and we've gone from what I think might be his best map to what I think is probably his worst map. This map is just too big and open, I think, right? In terms of, yeah, the TPs, you can find some positions for them, but it's not like, you know, it's not always amazing. It's not always the easiest. You know, it's not like Chamber. Again, with these TPs, one thing you have to know is you do have to look towards it, right? So there's just a lot of like open spaces. I guess you could play in this corner and it's okay, but then you're actually slightly out of range, so you'd actually have to run forward a bit. So everything is just a little bit off on this map. I think it's just a bit too big, a bit too open for him, because again, like in terms of like where you want to place your Interceptor here for the utility, like some okay spots, but again, like your opponent might walk up here, right? This might be a position where they do, you know, manage to get to and destroy some utility up there. And also, he doesn't have the most stopping power. He's not the best for like retakes, so it does just feel a little bit kind of, I don't know if he really suits this map. Yeah, there's no range restriction on his utility, which is good for this map, but again, like in terms of like the way the map is designed here for like defensive rotates as well, you know, there isn't potentially the easiest options. Like, where would you put a TP here, right? Like, where am I putting this at the start of the round? you know, like putting it there and playing on the other side of mid, you know, like, and then TPing across here, like, maybe, but, you know, like, it just feels all a little, like, too big for him, essentially. I think there's just going to be better options here on Abyss. Now let's talk about Corrode, and on Corrode, the thing is, I actually think the best way of playing Corrode is without any Sentinel whatsoever. I guess Vice is probably the best Sentinel so far on this map. I do think there are some things that you can do which will be quite good, right, in terms of, again, like, teleporting for rotates is something that you're definitely going to, you know, want to do. For instance, if you put one there and you put one in B heaven, for instance, and by the way, I have tested this. You can run all the way to B, put down a teleport, put one there, come and play over towards A. Like, you can actually do it if you, as long as you're not yapping in the pre-round, you know, you can potentially get to these kind of positions, or do it the opposite way around as well, of course. But, you know, if you were in this kind of spot and, you know, you TP, and then, you know, you're in mid and maybe you get across here and TP up into B heaven, right? Obviously, rotating on Corrode takes an absolute age. So in that sense, it's like, ooh, that's nice. That's really good. My problem is, and I do think this will be true for probably quite a bit as well. It probably depends somewhat what they do with Yoru, because Yoru on this map, you know, can TP across here anyway, right? And kind of do that role for you. But if they heavily nerfed Yoru to where he couldn't maybe do that, then I think maybe you could start looking at a bit of an option here for Veto. But my problem for Veto is here on a map like Corrode is I don't think he gives you enough on attack. You know, like he really isn't giving you that much on attack other than his ult being pretty good, and like he helps you with post plants, but you know, like I think you want agents that can help you maybe take a bit of space as well. So he's not a bad option on Corrode. I don't think he is a bad option on Corrode, but I still think that playing no Sentinel is actually the way to play this map and be best at it. But he's not awful. In ranked, you could definitely do it. Okay, moving on to Haven here for Veto, and on this one, again, you're obviously competing with the likes of Killjoy and Cypher. Again, there are, like there is for Chamber, right, some interesting TP plays. There's also potential for, you know, some rotate plays as well coming in here. So, you know, you could definitely see yourself, you know, playing down here, you know, using this box as a bit of cover, going like one just here, right, going two just there, right, something like so. You know, that's all for you, and you know, getting across the map somewhat, you know, could be handy, or maybe, you know, rotating across B as well. There are also some interesting, you know, spots, and again, you can use a little trick to get on these boxes with your teleport at the start of the round. Go and watch my video on my channel to talk about that, right? And put your thing in positions like this. So there are some decent interceptor spots potentially as well, right? That you can use. I think I found another one somewhere up here as a decent spot as well for any C kind of exit coming from both sides. So there's definitely some interesting things you can do on this map. Again, though, I feel like, you know, one of the things that you're giving up when you play Veto, of course, is that information, right? Which I feel like on a map like Haven, having that extra information, I think is going to be a bit better. So I'd still say that, you know, your Killjoys, your Cyphers, maybe even your Vice is going to be like a little bit better overall, just because of kind of maybe some of that extra info they provide. Moving on to Pearl, and Pearl I think is an interesting one, because the meta on Pearl in terms of like pro play and what teams are playing and stuff was actually, there was quite a mix, and there was actually quite a bit of double senti as well. And the thing is with an agent like Veto, again, is for the rotates and stuff like that, and again, I've tested things like this, you can do it, you know, but if you imagine something like this, let's say you're playing out towards Art, right, you might even start out by, you know, putting your little interceptor somewhere here, right, and using this as kind of, you know, playing in towards here, you know, got my little interceptor, hold this space, you know, they push you back, maybe eventually you TP, oh, actually they're going B, oh, watch them expire. You know, I just have that option to instantly come over towards B. So definitely some good use here on Pearl. I think for sure being able to rotate kind of through mid towards B, back B towards mid, you know, things like that, I do think are going to be useful. Somewhat similar things you can do over towards A maybe as well, right? Where again, you might end up doing something, you know, like this. Maybe you are already playing in B heaven, right? Maybe this is where you're playing B heaven, right? For whatever it is, and then you go, oh, they're actually going A. Okay, I could TP straight into mid just there, you know, nice and useful. Maybe take a quick look at, oh, what's going on towards R, and then if I need to, TP kind of backside towards A and get there as well, right? So again, doing stuff like that, pretty useful. There's also going to be a couple spots that you can TP away from, right? Over towards B long as well, right? Like being in this corner and potentially then back into heaven. So a setup could look something like this, right? Where you go boom, you know, something like boom. Play in this corner, you know, get aggro, get up here, you know, oh, they found me, get out, right? Then kind of maybe play from the back side, right? Force more util out, TP again, into heaven, right? Get out. Good, right? And I do think like double senti here with Vice and this agent, particularly, you know, for some of these BXX that come out as well. Like if you had your little orb, you know, somewhere like up here, right? For when they come in, could be useful, you know, or even behind this box potentially as well. Like I do think there's options here. I do think this is he is actually quite a decent agent on Pearl, I think. Okay, now moving on to Split, which again, similar to Bind. Think about the agents that get played on this map, right? Raze, Yoru, Fade, those kind of agents. You're looking at like a good agent pool that is pretty common on this map for someone like Veto. You're gonna have some decent rotate options as well. Potentially, you're gonna have some good options, you know, for potentially getting out of spots. So you've got multiple TP options for yourself as well in terms of how you want to use them. You know, you might want to use them, for instance, is kind of a cool one where you can put a TP somewhere in vent somewhere maybe to start the round. And again, you might start off the round by putting one kind of in towards B heaven here. You might start off the round playing towards A, right? Fighting this, but you know, getting in here. Oh, they're coming towards me. TP again. Keep an eye out for where you actually have to TP, and then from here I can instantly go across into B heaven, right? So again, multiple use cases here in terms of, do you want to play for kind of, you know, TPing backwards kind of plays? You know, again, another one that you might want to do something like one in there, right? And then one back site, or one in heaven, or whatever it is, right? So you know, you come out of the round, you start the round, play aggro at the start of the round in towards here, you quickly TP away, you know, you then try and hold the site maybe from this spot, or TP back site to reposition. Like, you know, all of those are options, right? And this is again a reason why I kind of like him on Split, is has counters to things, you know, probably going to be some interesting positions to put, you know, your little interceptor in that are hard to destroy for your opponent, that, you know, will get some value for you if you time it well. You know, this trap play as well, you know, the little trip here, you know, that seizes people, you know, comboing with, you know, your own Raze or whatever, right? If they walk into this and get seized and then you nade them or whatever it is, again, useful, right? So overall with Veto, I think just this is a map that, again, I feel pretty comfortable in playing him. Again, we did see some double senti on this map. Not sure that's super popular, but of course, I think this will be a decent map for him as well. Sunset is kind of an interesting one. Again, the way the map is kind of laid out is actually somewhat similar to Abyss here, if you think about it, in terms of the CT, right? You've got kind of the long spawn route, and then you've got kind of this route across the middle that potentially attackers can come into, right? So again, the rotate options aren't necessarily the best here. I also think in terms of like what your goal is on defense side Sunset a lot of the time, you know, you think of like Cypher, and basically your goal a lot of the time on Sunset, I think, is to be able to hold a certain point, right? You want to hold market, or you want to hold back side, you know, you want to hold the space. This is not an agent that, you know, I think is amazing at holding a space. He has some delay if you're good at timing your interceptor and it doesn't get destroyed and you're kind of, you know, getting a bit tricky with it. But in terms of then like holding the overall space once that utility's back up, you know, he doesn't have a ton of options there. So I'm just not sure he suits the map that well, even though again, he will be able to counter some of the things that probably come out on Sunset. I'm just not sure that this is an amazing map for him. This map, I think, would more be, you know, one where you're looking to get kind of aggressive with the TPs, if anything, right? You're looking to take a fight, get out. But again, it's like, are you going to take this fight and like swing back to there, you know, and then TP out? It is more kind of like you're going to have a judge in this angle, and then you're going to TP here, and then maybe you're going to have a judge back here, kill someone, you know, and then TP back here. That feels more like what this map is, right? Similar over towards B, where you might have a judge in this corner. Like, that feels a bit more, you know, like on brand for this, I suppose, right? And again, you could put one like there, and then, you know, start off with judge here, TP, you know, judge here if they keep coming. If they don't, just, you know, come across here, TP. You know, judge here. That seems more like what this map would be for him rather than anything else. But I'm not sure that that is like the absolute, you know, kind of best case use for this agent. So overall, I think he's playable on pretty much all of the maps bar Abyss that are currently in the map pool. I think there are some maps like Bind and Split, I think, where he more so excels, and then, you know, there's a few maps where you can probably find some good use case for him as well. In ranked, I think, yeah, probably don't play him on Abyss, but probably everything else is kind of fair game, and you can make it work if that's what you want to do.